envelope arrives on a Thursday morning, not by registered post, not marked urgent, not stamped with red ink or legal warning, just another white envelope laying on the hallway floor besides the takeaway menus, supermarket coupons, and leaflets offering half-price broadband. Most people would walk past it, but then you notice the logo, your bank, and suddenly your stomach tightens. Because in modern Britain, people no longer fear brown envelopes, they fear white ones. You pick it up, carry it into the kitchen, drop it beside the kettle. Outside the weather is grey, in the way British weather can be grey. Damp pavement, silent neighbours, condensation gathering on the corner of the window. The house is cold, not freezing, just cold enough that you keep your coat on indoors to avoid touching the thermostat. You boil the kettle, open the envelope, one sheet of paper. The language is polite, professional, and measured. The kind of language corporations use when they are about to hurt you carefully. It thanks you for your loyalty, thanks you for banking with them, mentions the changing market conditions, economic pressures, and inflation. Then halfway down the page, it comes with a sentence that matters. Your overdraft charges are increasing. Again, you think. You stare at the number, then stare again. Because this is no longer a temporary squeeze. This is not a difficult month. This is not something you fix by skipping a takeaway or cancelling the Netflix. This is something bigger. A system where being poor has become one of the most expensive things a person can be. And the frightening part is not the charge itself. The frightening part is how normal it has become. Because across Britain right now, millions of people are opening similar letters. Millions are checking their banking apps before getting out of bed. Millions are calculating whether they can afford food before payday. Not because they're reckless, not because they failed, but because the economy changed quietly, gradually, then all at once. Welcome back. On this channel, we look at beyond the headlines and political slogans to understand what life actually feels like for ordinary people. The system changing modern day Britain, the hidden mechanics behind the debts, housing, work, and survival. And tonight, we're talking about the trap, the invisible machine turning financial stress into corporate profit. The reason working people feel permanently exhausted. The reason emergencies now feel catastrophic. And why millions of people are discovering that poverty in modern Britain is no longer accidental. It is structured. 5 years ago, things felt different. Not easy, but different. In 2021, interest rates were near zero. Energy bills were manageable. Food prices had not yet exploded. Rents was already painful, but not suffocating. The people still believed the difficult periods would pass. Then inflation arrived. Slowly at first, then violently. Milk, bread, egg, fuel, electricity, rent, insurance, council tax. Every month, something else increased. And what made it terrifying was not one giant collapse. It was the constant drip. An extra £12 here, £30 there, another direct debit climbing quietly in the background. Until one day, people looked at their payslip and realized something horrifying. The wages had not moved, but the price of existing had. That is the moment that modern financial stress truly begins. Not when you become unemployed, not when disaster strikes, but when your income stays still while life becomes more expensive around you. And once the gap opens, the trap begins. First comes the overdraft. Only temporary, you tell yourself. Just 1 month. Then the credit card. Then the Klarna. ClearPay. PayPal. Pay in 3. 3 small installments. Then 5. Then 10. Nothing looks dangerous individually. That is the genius of it. Modern debt no longer looks or feels dramatic. It feels convenient, invisible, normal. Until one unexpected expense arrives. A broken boiler, a failed MOT, a school trip, a dental bill. And suddenly, the entire structure collapses. Because most people are no longer surviving on income. They are surviving on timing. The timing of the direct debit, timing of the wages, timing of bills. One delay, one emergency, one bad week, and the whole system punishes you immediately. Late fees, overdraft charges, missed payment penalties, high interest, lower credit score, a financial domino effect. And every single penalty costs money. This is the part nobody teaches in school. Being poor is expensive, very expensive. Imagine 2 people buying the exact same washing machine. One person has savings. They walk into a shop, pay £320, take it home, finished. The second person does not have £320. So they finance it. Weekly payment, interest, extra charges, protection plan. By the end of the agreement, they may have paid £700 or more for the same washing machine. The rich buy products once. The poor buy them repeatedly. And this logic now exists everywhere. Insurance is cheaper annually, but the poorer household pay monthly because they cannot afford the lump sum. Energy is cheaper by direct debit, but many struggling households cannot maintain stable balances. Healthy food is often cheaper in bulk, but people living week by week buy smaller amounts at higher prices. Train tickets are cheaper when booked early, but uncertainty makes planning impossible. Even mobile phone contracts become more expensive if your credit score falls. Every system quietly rewards stability, and stability itself has become a luxury. This is what economists call the poverty premium. The extra cost people pay simply because they are struggling, not luxury spending, not irresponsibility, but instead survival. And modern Britain is full of invisible penalties like this. A missed payment can damage your credit score for years. One difficult month can affect your ability to rent, your ability to borrow, your insurance cost, your phone contract, sometimes even your employment checks. The system does not ask you why you're struggling or why you struggled. It simply records that you did, and then you're priced accordingly. There was a time when people associated poverty with unemployment. That illusion is gone. One of the defining realities of Britain in 2026 is the rise of the working poor. People with jobs, people working full time, people doing everything society asks them to do, and still drowning. Healthcare assistants, delivery drivers, realtor workers, teaching assistants, care workers, warehouse workers. Entire sectors now run on people who cannot comfortably absorb a £400 emergency. Think about how extraordinary that is. A person can work 40 hours a week and still fear opening their banking app, still skip meals before payday, still avoid heating their home in winter. The old social contract has fractured. People were told, work hard, stay out of trouble, pay taxes, be responsible, and life would stabilize. But millions followed those rules and discovered something brutal. The rules changed. Housing costs exploded. Rent consumed larger part of their income. Interest rates rose. Food inflation climbed. Meanwhile, wages struggled to keep pace. And once survival becomes expensive enough, people stop planning. They stop thinking 5 years ahead. They think Friday to Friday. That changes a society because financial stress does not stay inside a bank account. It enters relationships, sleep, parenting, mental health, communities. People become shorter tempered, more anxious, more isolated. You can feel it everywhere now. On buses, in supermarkets, at a petrol station, an entire country operating with elevated stress levels. And perhaps the saddest part of this, many people still blame themselves. They think they failed individually, when in reality, millions are experiencing the exact same pressures simultaneously. This is not a personal failure. This is a structural strain. Modern debt does not look like old debt. It no longer arrives wearing balaclavas. It arrives with pastel colors and friendly apps. Buy now, pay later. Split into 3. No stress. Interest free. The language is soft, gentle, designed to feel harmless. And for many people, those services genuinely become survival tools. School uniforms, Christmas presents, shoes for growing children, food shop, the problem is not always the borrowing itself. The problem is what happens when several small debts collide. One missed installment becomes two, then four, then collections notice, then anxiety every time your phone vibrates. Modern financial system understands human psychology extraordinarily well. They know people under stress prioritize immediate relief over long-term cost. And when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, frightened, convenience become irresistible. That is why financial pressures create more financial pressures. The poorer people become, the more expensive solutions appear more attractive. And the economy increasingly profits from urgency, fast loan, fast food, fast delivery, fast credit. Everything immediate, everything expensive. Because struggling people rarely have the luxury of waiting. Then there's the rent, the single largest financial pressure crushing modern Britain. For many people under 40s, housing no longer feels temporary, it feels impossible. Entire generation now spend huge proportion of their income simply securing shelter. One bedroom flat consuming half a salary. House share into people's 30s, 40s, families squeezing into temporary accommodation. And while homeowners complain about mortgage increases, renters often face something worse. No control at all. The landlord increases the rent. Either pay or leave. And moving itself costs money. Deposits, agency fees, storage, transport, time off work. So people stay, even when it hurts. Housing insecurity changes human behavior in profound ways. People delay relationships, delay children, delay stability. Some move hundreds of miles away from support network just to afford rent. Others remain trapped in unhealthy living situations because financially there is nowhere else to go. The emotional exhaustion of modern housing is rarely discussed properly. The constant uncertainty, the feeling of never truly settling, the awareness that one landlord's decision can destabilize your entire life, and all the whole while, property continues functioning as a wealth generation for those who already own assets. That divide matters. Because in modern Britain, wealth increasingly comes from owning things, not earning things. There's something that people misunderstand about long-term financial stress. It changes the brain, not metaphorically, literally. Constant financial anxiety keeps people in survival mode. The mind becomes consumed by calculations. Can I afford fuel? Can I pay rent? What date does that direct debit leave? What happens if the car breaks? This level of stress drains cognitive energy. Simple decisions become exhausting. And eventually, people stop thinking strategically because they are too busy staying afloat. That is why telling struggling people to simply budget better often misses the entire reality. Most are already budgeting constantly, obsessively. This issue is not always poor decisions. Sometimes there is simply not enough money. No amount of financial discipline can fully compensate for stagnant wages, rising costs, and structural instability. And yet, shame remains one of the strongest forces in modern poverty. People hide their struggles, pretend things are fine, smile through overdraft, parent quietly skip meals, friends avoid social events, couples fight in whispers after children have gone to bed. Financial stress become loneliness, and loneliness make people easier to exploit because isolated people ask for less help, challenge fewer systems, stay quieter. There are things wealthier people understand instinctively because they grew up around financial confidence. Not necessarily genius, not magic, familiarity. They negotiate bills, challenge fees, move money strategically, use reward systems, switch providers, understand interest, understand contract. Most importantly, they understand leverage. Money creates opportunity. Opportunity creates time. And time protects people from panic decisions. If the boiler breaks and you have savings, it is an inconvenience. If the boiler breaks and you have nothing, it becomes a crisis. That difference shapes entire lives. Because financial resilience is not just about wealth, it is about recovery speed. How quickly can a person absorb shock? Right now, millions of people cannot absorb any. And once people become trapped financially, escaping becomes incredibly difficult because every emergency pushes them backwards again. This is why inequalities compound over time. Wealth protects itself and poverty exhausts itself. There is a phrase economists use, discretionary spending. But for many struggling households, there is no discretionary spending left. No holidays, no luxury shopping, no extravagant night out. The cut happens everywhere. Heating, food quality, medicine, social life. People stop replacing worn shoes, delay dental appointments, ignore symptoms. Children notice more than adults realize. They notice parents pretending not to be hungry. They notice stress around shopping. They notice tension every time a bill arrives. Financial instability becomes emotional atmosphere. And over time, survival mode reshapes culture itself. People become less trusting, more individualistic, more fearful. Communities weaken when everyone is financially overwhelmed. That may be one of the hidden costs of this entire era, not just economic pressure, but social fragmentation. Now, despite everything that we've discussed, there are practical steps that genuinely matters. Not miracle cures, nor motivational slogans, real actions. First, ask. Ask banks about hardship support. Ask utility providers about social tariffs. Ask councils about emergency assistance. Ask charities for guidance. Many support systems exist quietly in the background, but people often discover them far too late. Secondly, we need to understand interest. Interest is just not a fee. It is time working against you. The faster higher interest debts are addressed, the less damage compounds. Thirdly, we need to avoid shame. This may sound emotional rather than financial, but it matters enormously. Silence isolates people. Isolation increases vulnerability. Financial struggles is now widespread, far more widespread than people admit publicly. Fourth, build even the smallest emergency buffer possible. Not because saving £5 changes everything overnight, but because the tiny cushions interrupt panic, and panic is expensive. Finally, recognize that many of these struggles are systemic. You are living through one of the most financially strained periods many ordinary households have ever experienced in decades. It is important to note that whilst there have been poorer periods in British history, Victorian poverty was harsher, post-war shortage was deeper, but modern poverty may be the most effective poverty Britain has ever created. Because now the process is automated. Algorithm monitors accounts. Fees applies instantly. Interest compounds silently. Money leaves struggling household through an app and direct debit without anybody ever needing to knock on a door. The process is smooth, professional, polite. A letter arrives on a Thursday. Charges apply on a Friday. And by Monday, the money has already moved upward. Quietly, legally, repeatedly. That is the trap. Not one dramatic collapse, but millions of tiny financial extractions every day across the country. And perhaps the hardest truth of all is this. Many people are trapped inside this system, still believing they failed personally, when in reality, they're trying to survive inside an economy increasingly designed around instability, debt, and permanent financial pressure. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because one of the most damaging lies modern financial hardship tells people is that they're alone. But you're not. And they aren't either. Thank you for listening to us. Have a good one. Bye for now.